Saintess summons skeletons. By Morn. Chapter 51, Orvad the Mountain Shaper, 3. I figured it was coming but it still hurts. Fuck. Ah. No time. Up above the water, mana was fluctuating wildly. Orvad had not been waiting idly while she prepared her next move. And with the man's annoying tendency to create deadly constructs out of thin air, it was better not to leave him unchecked for too long. The hollow grief would hide underwater for a bit. Sofia ascended, localizing the very obvious mana shape of the trident. She jumped for it. As she flew out of the water, hundreds of stone spikes all turned to face her. She pierced through the air, coming closer and closer to the flying trident. The stone spikes launched at her in waves, most bouncing off her scales and resilient skin, some managing to pierce through. The spikes didn't slow her momentum as she closed in on the trident. This was still all according to plan. Orvad tried to move the trident out of the way, but it had been stationary and moved far too slow. Such a large object needed some time to accelerate. Sofia reached the gigantic stone weapon. She grabbed it by the tip and used her sharp claws to scale it, climbing to the top of the hilt. Her body was damaged from the spikes. One had lodged itself in her left leg. She couldn't use regret anymore. The legs and back had taken most of the damage from the rain of spikes. Health, 14,552/69,640. Stamina, 39,509/69,640. Mana, 33,393/69,640. Now. Sofia jumped from the trident, straight towards the giant bell above the hero. At the same time, the hollow grief emerged from the water, right in front of Orvad and aiming straight for him. The stone mage stopped the undead's punch with his layered stone shields, not even triggering a lotus. But he also fell victim to the undead's passive skill. Orvad had seen something that had first shocked him, then threw him in a violent fit of rage. Countless spikes appeared and stabbed at the already retreating undead. During this second where the hollow grief occupied all of the hero's attention, Sofia struck the bell. Augmented by the skill in her right arm, her punch packed more power than ever before. The bell was completely pulverized in a single hit, reduced to dust. A system notification followed. Suffering, your next attack will deal additional damage proportional to your missing health. Costs 10,000 mana per cast. Right arm blood vessels must be undamaged for the skill to correctly resolve. That got the hero's attention right back on her as she fell down. Every remaining lotus sprouted open under his command, ejecting deadly petals aimed at Sofia. She had barely enough mana left and used misfortune for the second time. But it didn't work, half of the mana gone just like that. The skill had failed. Her right leg was already too injured. Oh! I'm dead if I take more than one. Can't dodge. She ordered for the undead that had returned underwater to jump out and kick her. The undead, who in Sofia's eyes was still looking like a small blonde girl, flew out of the lake right under Sofia. When it reached her height, it kicked her away from the petal's path, taking the brunt of the attack instead. Summoned undead, hollow grief has succumbed. Sofia plunged into the cold water once again. Health, 8,241/69,640. Stamina, 18,452/69,640. Mana, 19,499/69,640. Chunks of stone battered the water all around, the petals debris. Nothing was left of the undead creature. Waiting for some more mana and health to regenerate, hiding at the quiet bottom of the lake, Sofia primed the skill in her left arm. It was the only one she couldn't use until now. Hollow Heart, hollows out the target's heart. Requires direct physical contact. Costs 10,000 mana per cast. Left arm blood vessels must be undamaged for the skill to correctly resolve. One hit. No more lotuses in my way. The shields the undead broke are all reformed by now. Trident is revolving again, ready to strike. He's preparing something else, I think. Misfortune is likely good to go again. Just a bit more mana. More mana. I have more mana. How? How did I not think of this? If there's one skill that I could use without the system's help. Her feet firmly planted in the lake's depths, Sofia raised her right hand. Nothing happened for a second. Then a spark, which died down as fast as it came. Because I'm not mid-air? She couldn't see how that would stop her. Come on. All the mana that should be coursing through her veins without a thought thanks to the system's help, she had to manually control instead. The waves of mana began rushing inside her whole body to the crux of her hand. It was a feeling she knew all too well. Come on. Come on. The sparks became more frequent and powerful, but the lightning wouldn't form. Could she not use it underwater? The mana-charged water wasn't reacting like how water would. It didn't boil or evaporate, it looked like it wouldn't even let electricity through all that well. Work. Like a miniature star lighting the bottom of the lake, a small bolt of lightning took form in her hand, twisting and crackling, growing longer and longer. Its mere presence sent shockwave after shockwave through the lake. Let's go! Who needs the system? This power is mine. Take this, Flower Man. This one's for Fox. Aiming up and above, she let the rampaging bolt of plasma loose. It ripped through the dark waters of the lake, completely unhindered in its course. At the same time, she dashed up herself, following the lightning spear. Nearing the surface, she sensed the skill crash on the hero's stone shields. She could also now detect thousands of small new mana signatures, spread around everywhere above the lake's surface. More stone weapons. Finally out of the water, Sofia flew up. Though the explosion of her own skill, it couldn't hurt her demon form. Piercing the fire and the stone shrapnel, her momentum carried her up in the air like a cannonball. Not a second later, out of the explosions and smoke, she had almost climbed the 70 or so meters altitude to where the hero floated on his cube. He was only a few meters away, and he hadn't gotten time to reform his stone shields. He was wide open. An unprotected target floating on a lonely stone cube. 8 perfectly square cubes of stone instantly appeared out of nowhere. They weren't formed by mana, which would have taken some time. Storage item. The cubes sprang in her direction. This was the end. She would no doubt die from the impact. The stone needles that had been spread all over the lake had also come to life to surround her and stop her ascension, sealing her fate. As the cubes sped up, the hero looked at the horizon with a satisfied air of unchallenged superiority. Yet another flawless victory, he probably thought. His eyes widened in shock, his face contorted, his whole body spasmed. Suddenly he couldn't breathe, his leg was in pain. To his surprise, a cut-off demon arm had planted itself firmly in his left thigh. A flowery stain of red was growing on his robes, spreading from the heart. He looked down one final time to see the demon, further down, who had already been missing its tail, now also missing an arm. It was limply falling toward the lake, surrounded by his own trusty cubes that had been about to crush her, and that were now plummeting, like the simple chunks of stone they were. He could only powerlessly endure, as his vision blurred and his health points reached 0. And this one? This one is for my sister. Like a puppet whose strings had been cut, Sofia sank to the bottom of the lake. She never saw the next ephemeral notification from the system. You have murdered Orvad Moria Ovohen, Stonemason Leave 299. Chapter 52, The Great Storm. The cold and moldy basement they had been squatting in for the last 8 days was terrible, but it was still better than the storm outside. Even so, they would have to walk all the way to the church if they wanted food. And they had to go there late at night, in the dark, under the pouring rain. It was then that the servants gave away the leftovers, and despite the weather, they likely wouldn't be the only ones going. Today again, the storm was showing no signs of stopping. It had been a week. A young child was hugging her knees in a corner, she looked up at a slightly older child, who was preparing to go face the downpour and the wind. "I don't want to go," the child in the corner protested weakly. Only the crashing of the rain answered her complaint. The older child looked at her silently, doing her best to force a smile on her own face. "Stop muttering and come. I know it's hard, but we need to eat." She tried to appease the younger one. "Come under my cape, big sis will protect you." The cape in question was a stinky old patched-up rag smothered in grease and mud. It did a semi-decent job at repelling water. But it was too small for her too. The more protection she had, the less her sister kept for herself. 3 days ago, her older sister had started coughing. She was sweaty and weak. The curled-up girl couldn't even go to the church by herself. She wouldn't find her way in the labyrinthic streets of the city. They hadn't eaten anything since then. She was worried. Hunger was a thing, sickness was another. For poor people, healers didn't exist. Thankfully, it seemed that today, her sister had recovered somewhat. She thought about telling her sister to lay back down, but her rumbling stomach forced her otherwise. Under the glacial rain and violent winds, 2 frail girls trekked through the city. 10th day of the storm. The rain wasn't stopping. Some streets were flooded now, the basement's trapdoor had started leaking, and the outdoors water level was getting dangerously close to the height of their one and only window. The iron grate didn't stop the cold, and it wouldn't stop the water. The older sister's sickness had relapsed. Despite the younger one's wishes to go find a healer, going outside wasn't a possibility anymore. At least, a luckier group of kids had shared a bit of bread with them the day before, so they had some food. The young kid would only wait and wait in the flooding basement, taking care of her sister however she could. Was the rain ever going to stop? 12th day of the storm. The basement had flooded. The 2 sisters had stacked all the moldy junk in a corner and that was their island. The mold, insects, and wood shards made it worse than the icy floor, but uncomfortable as it was, they were out of the water. The rain didn't stop. It never stopped. Water came running through the basement's openings, a torrent of wild natural forces, gushing streams of muddy water. Soon the basement was completely filled. Swimming up and up, thrown around by the currents, she couldn't breathe. A light came from above. Just a bit more, she would reach it. Finally, the surface, wild waves, flashing thunder, scriptures rain. The 4 Lord Griffins, keepers of old, watchers of the world's beginning and end, drew circles in the red sky. Her golden blonde hair was stuck to her face. She had a hard time catching her breath. The older sister was right there, a dozen centimeters further than where she could reach, passed out on a floating crate, the waves pushing her away. Misshapen creatures swam around them both, impassive, except for 2 of them, fighting in the distance. She tried to grab her sister, leveraged all of her reach, but her arms were too short. She swam but she only got further from the crate. She tried to scream, but she had no voice. Already but a tiny dot on the horizon, the sister and her crate were swallowed by a draconian wave. The red sky turned dark. The ocean froze, rain turned to snow and snow to ash. Time stopped. The wind died down. Nary a sound could be heard. Something ate her from the inside. In the distance, there was no sun, only the great void, and its greedy apostles, coming to devour all. Sofia awoke at the bottom of the lake. Her face was planted in the mud. Thankfully she didn't actually need to breathe, she was still underwater anyway. This nightmare again. But different. Maybe. She reached out behind her back. The tail was back in place, good as new. So was her arm. All healed. Trial completion, survive the solstice, 61 hours remain. Whoa, okay. I was down for a long time. It's surprising no one came to finish me off. Could be that Orvad was the only one with tracking abilities. Or the lake's water was too toxic for the others. She seriously contemplated staying down there until the end of the trial. Looks like I'm safe. And this is pretty comfortable, weirdly enough. But it would be a waste to forego the bonus task like this. If Alith learns that I lazed out, I'll never hear the end of it. After all, Alith's level was tied to hers. Sofia pushed herself up from her muddy mold. The lake's bottom, littered with stone chunks of all sizes, felt livelier than before. It didn't take her long to find the dead body of the stone mage hero, who had sunk face first into the mud like she did. He didn't seem to be rotting at all, perhaps preserved by the lake's special water. Beside him was her own left arm, that had served as a physical contact to activate the spell. She observed the man's robe. The whole torso area was dyed dark red. She was curious about how exactly the skill had hollowed out his heart, but it was pretty clear that it had worked as intended, and she didn't feel like playing with a corpse. What about the storage item though? Circling the cadaver, she noticed a wooden bead bracelet on its wrist. Bead bracelet, plain but sturdy. Not it. But the man didn't look like he wore many things besides the bracelet and his robe. He didn't even wear shoes. So where? She concentrated on analyzing the flow of mana. Surely a storage item powerful enough to house large cubes of stone would cause some disturbance. But she couldn't find anything. The water itself was so full of mana that she couldn't pick up a trace of a magic item. This is when she recalled a detail from her first interaction with the man. He had yelled at her when she appeared, calling her a demon. It wasn't something she was focused on at the time, but she had seen it, a single gold tooth. Well, rest in peace, I guess. The real one could still be alive anyway, so. She upturned the dead body and forced its mouth open. The poison needle, a deadly last resort. But not for the user. This tooth could store many things besides stone. She pulled the tooth and swam up. Even at the surface, no one was waiting for her. No enemies, no allies. The morning's gentle breeze over the still lake was refreshing and serene. She swam out of the lake at the same spot she had entered it. Seeing the path of destruction she had left behind while charging through the fields and forests, it was unlikely that someone searching for her couldn't find her. Either they never came, or they all gave up. Sitting on the trunk of a tree that hadn't survived her previous sprint, she examined the gold tooth. It was quite underwhelming. This was the storage item, the identification had confirmed it, but no matter how much mana she injected inside it wouldn't open. What a letdown. She chucked the tooth back in the lake. It probably had safety measures in place, unlike her own cursed pendant, so that no one else could use it. Either way, she wouldn't be able to carry it out of the trial, so she had no choice but to rein down her curiosity and give up. What was important now was the additional task rewards. She had less than 3 days to avenge Aurelia. Should be a piece of cake. She departed, going in a straight line towards where she estimated the royal palace to be. Chapter 53, Heartless Task. Sofia's guess was that she had to at least kill the guy that had betrayed Aurelia, and maybe the rat that had been crying at his side too. Going so far as to kill them might even be unnecessary, but she had limited time, so straightforward solutions were better. She had other ideas like sitting on the throne, opening the treasury with the seal, or even completing a last revolutionary painting. Since the princess really liked her paints and brushes, she hoped that it wasn't actually to make a dumb painting, or she'd never get the rewards. Reaching the capital shouldn't take long. She didn't even try to be discreet. She was going too fast for anyone on her path to see her as anything but a grey blur flashing across the land. With the country's stronger hero dead, there was no one who could stop her anymore. I wonder if the others survived. Finding the capital took her more time than expected. It turned out she didn't know the country as well as she thought, and her high speed did nothing to prevent her from getting lost. Trial completion, survive the solstice, 9 hours remain. It was her first time actually seeing the royal palace from outside. It was quite impressive, and so was the capital city beside it, though it didn't come close to Drakran or Einzan. How did such a big city even disappear? I've never even heard of anything being here. This whole region should be a forest in the real world. There was apparently a lot to learn about the Scarage Kingdom's past. A trip to the forest would be in order once she got back. If I managed to return there without a boat. I need to find Wat Shisnam and his girl, Jevon and Ellen. Well, it doesn't matter, she reflexively said out loud. She had been crouching on top of a small stone house's roof. Her sudden talking had alerted a passerby. The walking large-bellied noble in his 40s had barely glanced at her. He didn't have time to scream before the shock caused him to faint and fall face first on the pavement. Come on now, I don't look that bad. Seeing her own reflection in the lake for the first time had been disturbing, but she thought her appearance quite graceful. In comparison with the distorted thing she had killed in the tower's basement, she was a peerless beauty. Having no face isn't that big of a deal. Instead she had a mouth with a set of sharp teeth and 12 eyes all spread all over her head, no nose, no ears, nor anything else. Or I got too used to seeing weird shit. Well, she would hit the palace at night, and if she couldn't find the targets, she would go straight for the church next. In the meantime, I'm hungry. Later that night, somewhere in the royal palace. This one fainted too. What kind of guard are those? This is what protects the king and his family. She had been searching the palace for a little while, but it was too large, and she had no idea where the king might be. Presumably in his bedchamber somewhere, but who knew where that was? The original Aurelia would have known. Sofia had tried to get the information out of the guards or palace maids, but as soon as anyone saw her, they would invariably faint, before she could even try to communicate. Orvad and the Duke had been fine. Were these people just too low-level to look at her? Left with no other choice, she kept looking around, checking every corridor on every floor. She ended up in a place that looked familiar. This was the section of the palace where Aurelia's room was. It was a whole part that was more luxurious. This has to be the living quarters of the whole royal family. If he's anywhere, it'll be around here. There's more guards too. Said guards also all fainted at the sight of her, but their mere presence in greater numbers said a lot. Her thoughts were interrupted by the blaring of a horn. Alarm? Let's speed up. Since they knew there was an intruder, she had to go fast. She wasn't worried about the guards catching her, but she didn't want Jevon to flee, if he was even here. She entered the closest room. It was empty. Taking a few steps back, she then ran into the wall. The polished stone walls couldn't stop her. This had to be the fastest way to check all the rooms, and so she ran in a straight line, giving a quick glance at the content of each room. She would burst through each room, and ended up outside. She had broken through the outer wall. A quick activation of regret later, she was rampaging in another direction. This place had many rooms, but most of them were empty, truly a waste. More horns were resounding now, whatever that meant. No matter, she kept running through the many rooms of the palace. You have murdered Jevon Grand Court, King Leave 99. Wait, what? She stopped in her tracks and checked the message again. There was no doubt, she had killed the guy, somehow. She backtracked through the last few rooms, and found out what happened. She entered a room that had previously been empty, or so she had thought. There were 3 armored knights in here now, but they had all collapsed on the spot upon her entry. You have murdered Billy, Squire Leave 36. But I'm not even running anymore. Oh. The knights. Well. The king was likely alerted by the horns. He had been behind a folding screen, putting on clothes, presumably in a hurry. He was hit square in the head by a stray stone block projected by her breaking through the wall. Guy wouldn't have survived Orvad for a second. Was all she thought as she observed the half-naked dead man bleeding out on the floor. Job's done, now the girl. She thought about searching him for the royal seals, but ultimately didn't bother. She couldn't bring anything out of here anyway, and there wasn't that much time left. Sofia ran through all the rooms in this section of the palace without finding her target. She paid more attention to details now, trying to spot rooms that looked occupied, or persons hiding, like behind folding screens. Yet her search was in vain as she could not locate her. The only people she found were more and more guards, all fainting at the sight of her, 3 more even dying on the spot. The system prompts revealed that this was not enough to complete the bonus task. Trial completion, survive the solstice, 4 hours remain. Additional rewards task, avenge Aurelia, pending. I've got 4 hours to complete this. I should be in a hurry but I can't feel any pressure after that last fight. If I don't get it then I don't get it. Well, it would be nice to get it though. Time to raid the church I guess, can't see where else she could be that I could find in so little time. I'd ask around for her location if everyone wasn't collapsing whenever I came near. The church's main building in town had a high spire, looking exactly like the one that had presumably housed the oracle back in the Holy See. Even if the girl wasn't there, maybe the heroes would be. They weren't a danger anymore, but they might not faint near her, giving her more opportunities to gather information. She crossed the hundreds of meters between the palace garden and the church in a single jump, landing with an acrobatic roll on the blue-tiled roof of the church's main building. She walked to a tower's window and tried opening it. It was the kind that doesn't open. Her nails cut through the glass like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't exactly silent, but it still made much less noise than any other way she had to get in quickly. The church's interior was silent and austere, it had the same atmosphere that the Holy See had at night. She rushed up the tower first, not finding much besides an imposing belfry at the top. There were many more towers, it would be inefficient to check them all, so she descended to the main building instead. The church was a large T-shaped building, each branch 3 floors high. From one point of the T to the opposite, it was probably 500 meters long. Towers sprouted from all sides and the roof. Entering the main building, she was instantly faced with a group of 3 patrolling paladins. 2 of them collapsed, like many that day, but surprisingly, the oldest of the bunch stood strong. She was a mature woman with a scarred face. Her golden paladin armor boasted a long blue cloak draped over her shoulder and side, completely hiding her left arm. Chapter 54, Is that it? The female paladin was armed to the teeth, and presumably high level. A second passed, the monster and the paladin staring at each other. After which the paladin surprised Sofia by dropping her sword and raising her hand. "You're surrendering?" Sofia asked with her grating voice. She had been ready to fight. The old paladin nodded once in response. "Why? I would rather live to see another day," she answered. "Will you lead me to Ellen then? Do I have a choice? So she's really here? Unless she's leading me to some trap? No. I still have regret available so I'm not too worried." Sofia gave a sign to the paladin to lead the way. The paladin turned around, without picking up her sword or even sparing a glance for her fallen comrades. Now that she was walking, her cape swayed around, revealing that she was actually missing an arm. Peculiar for a paladin to be missing a limb. Must date to before she joined the church. The paladin silently led the way through the tortuous corridors of the church. They passed multiple patrols but they would all faint before anyone could even ring the alarm. "Isn't what you're doing against the principles of the church?" Sofia asked. Even though the paladin walked remarkably fast for someone her age wearing a full set of heavy plate armor, the long walk in the church was quite boring. "Not really." "Should I elaborate?" the paladin answered, not slowing down in the slightest. But Sofia could see her trembling. "Please do." "I'm surprised a demon would even take interest in such matters." She forced a weak laugh but it didn't seem to help her calm much. "The princess isn't a believer or part of the church, at best she is a trading partner. I have no obligations toward her." "How pragmatic! And what does the church think about my kind? To talk of the recessed is a taboo, let alone becoming their apostle. But the demon lord isn't an enemy we are preoccupied with, the church has much greater purposes. The following silence compelled her to keep going. It also probably helped her take her mind out of her current circumstance. Wasting precious manpower in the pursuit of demons isn't something we do if we can avoid it. Only a few heroes are the kind to actively pursue such goals. Recessed? Demon King? Maybe we really need to go pay Cooley a second visit soon. I'm an apostle then? Apostle of sorrow? Are demons all transformed humans? She shivered at the memory of the disgusting rotten demon she had killed in the Mage Tower. They were both silent again for a while. How did you lose your arm? The paladin tensed up when she heard Sofia talk to her again, and relaxed somewhat when she heard the question. Level 80 Dire Wolf. I was only 12 when the caravan I was part of got attacked. I got bitten but survived, along with 8 others out of the original 90. The wound in my arm was too deep and it necrotized. Had to cut it. Our healer was of those who didn't make it. Now it cannot be healed anymore. Been like that for many decades. Her story was followed by yet another silence. She was the one to break it this time. May I be allowed some questions as well? She asked, turning around and giving a curt but respectful bow. You may, but keep walking. Sorry, the paladin resumed her guidance. If it isn't too presumptuous, how does one end up becoming an apostle? And why seek the princess? I cannot say much about this, nor talk for the others. For me, this was a last resort. There's nothing much to explain. And your other question, you already know the answer. So the new king? Yes. No wonder they sounded so many alarms. They were silent the rest of the way. The one-armed paladin stopped in front of an inconspicuous wooden door. We are here. If I am not needed anymore, I will go attend to those who collapsed on the way. She looks like the one who's about to collapse if I say no. Sofia waved her off and pushed the door. The lock gave up under her strength and the door flew open, revealing a disorderly bedroom with expensive-looking robes and jewelry thrown about everywhere. The princess, however, was nowhere to be seen. A thief got here before me? Sofia picked up a large mana disturbance coming from into a wardrobe near the closed windows. She approached slowly, her every step leaving deep claw marks in the ground. This was apparently too much for the girl hiding within, who addressed her without coming out of her hiding place. Stop! Leave me alone! Go away! But the footsteps coming toward her didn't stop. You already killed Jevon. I have no value. Her tone had shifted from scared to heartbroken. But Sofia didn't stop. I can't even be used as a hostage, no one wants me. Just take the seal on the desk and let me go. Please. Way to make me feel like an asshole. She was still the one who framed Aurelia to have her killed, can't forget that. Sofia opened the wardrobe closet. This was indeed Ellen, the princess that had been looking down at Aurelia and smirking at her while the king declared the death penalty. But she had nothing left of the elegance and decorum of the grieving noble lady she used to pretend being a month ago. She was nothing more than a shivering mess, hiding in fetal position at the back of a closet, encircled by a softly glowing blue barrier. She was lying in a puddle of yellow liquid. Sofia stood there dumbfounded. She had killed in battle, killed by accident, killed to save herself. But she had never killed someone that was just powerless, scared, hiding and begging for their life. The barrier wouldn't protect the princess. A single punch would certainly be enough to not only destroy the barrier but also the closet and the whole wall behind it. But she had a hard time doing it. Am I becoming weak-willed now? She isn't even real. It took her some time to gather her spirit and get ready. She would do it quickly and cleanly. Real or not, she could at least give the girl a painless death. She readied her fist and clenched her muscles. You have murdered Ellen Trinal, Princess Leave 6. Again? She hadn't done anything yet, but the princess had stopped breathing all the same. Really? The barrier hadn't disappeared when the girl died, it must have come from a magic item. I scared her to death? Well, this. Ah. Whatever. She gave a light kick to the nearby wall, opening a hole large enough for her to jump out the building. She jumped a few times and laid down on a rooftop to observe the night sky. That's at least one thing that looks exactly the same no matter the year. She contemplated her trial and took the chance to sort her emotions. Being stuck in this demonic body was a strange thing to accept. At the start she was relieved that it was temporary, but now she kind of dreaded going back to her weak human self. She liked her original appearance more, but it was unquestionable how strong and practical this form was. Losing the 360 degrees sight and the tail would be the hardest things to adjust to. Losing a limb was certainly not as easy as having to adapt to a new one. Well, I'm done now, right? She checked the system prompts. Trial completion, survive the solstice, 3 hours remain. Additional rewards task, avenge Aurelia, completed. Sofia sighed in relief. At least she hadn't done all this for nothing. Finally done. Now I relax for 3 hours and get my level 100. Should end at midnight. The city underneath was very much alive, even that late, the ripples of her actions at the palace just now reaching the populace. People were gathering outside, wondering what happened, why all the guards had suddenly been called to the palace. But Sofia couldn't care less. Hours later, the system clock showed a remaining time of 0. The day of the solstice, the shortest day of the year, had come and gone, and she was alive. Not human, but alive. Chapter 55, True Solstice. Sofia was anxiously monitoring her system prompt. The timer had hit 0 a good minute ago, but she was still there, waiting on a cold roof. The trial hadn't ended. Am I stuck here? Hey Mr. Archangel, did you die while I was in there? Don't forget me. Under her eyes, the letters of the system message morphed, forming new words. Trial completion, commit to your thievery before the true solstice's end. What? Hey, what is this? I am getting scammed. What true solstice? What damn thievery? The trial should be over. I don't even understand what you expect me to do. She was rightfully upset, but no one was here to answer her complaints. Had this whole thing been the Archangel's way to punish her for something? An elaborate trap? Maybe this whole trial thing was rigged in the first place. Nobody even understood why or how it existed. Sofia was still asking herself what she should be doing, looking around, when the sky disappeared. As if the night sky and its stars were a torch that got snuffed out, replaced by a dark void. Sofia knew of her own bad habit of overthinking and talking to herself, especially looking back at her fight against Orvad. She thought she could be more efficient if she toned down the pointless chatter in her head. It was easier said than done, but in times like this she at least managed to rapidly switch to a more survival-oriented mindset. This dark sky felt very familiar. The city that had been in somewhat of an uproar until now had turned silent. Everyone looked up at the sky. Reality shook with a muted thump. The sound and shock repeated a few seconds later, then a third time. A crack opened up high in the black void, a fissure spewing down eerie red light on the world from the high heavens. The crack grew larger and larger with each tremor, and out came something. It was a large pillar, like a tree trunk, or some sort of giant stake, carved out of polished, cleanly cut, opaque ice blue crystal. The pillar was slowly coming down out of the crack, its height seemingly endless. Sofia didn't want to believe it, but after she used her self-made identify she could only think of one thing: running away. The simple fact that the identify worked meant it wasn't a monster. This was a sentient being. The pilla's name was exactly along the lines of what she had feared. Alphagiad. Sofia's 360 degrees vision was a bit of a curse at times like this. Even while fleeing she couldn't help but see the thing come alive. When the pillar had almost reached the ground, its lower point had split into multiple smaller pillar branches, spreading out like the roots of a massive crystalline tree. These roots, however, had a life of their own, and they were quick to descend on the city. The silent city was silent no more. The citizens screamed and fled, but none could escape the sprawling tentacular roots when they had locked in on them. This thing was killing everyone without a sound. There was no deadly-looking monster or flashy fire attack, only a red light and the thing's roots impaling all of the living, and bringing them back to the floating pilla's base. Some larger roots had also planted themselves in the ground, pulsating in otherworldly rhythms. Sofia soon reached the edge of the capital city, trying to escape. Her path was soon blocked by the very thing she had tried to flee. The roots had come from the underground, and they writhed and split more and more, forming a tight-knit net around the city that started expanding to the sky. No one would escape unless they could fly. Even with her new body she wouldn't manage to jump over. Some braver people tried their luck nonetheless, rushing to make their way through the closing wall of crystal roots. The roots around them would split again into smaller threads, impaling them for all sides in a sea of crystalline thorns. When these outgrowths fused back to the main roots, nothing was left of the unfortunate souls who tried to cross the wall, not a single drop of blood. No escape. Did all of this actually happen in the real world? How have I never heard of it? I don't doubt that this thing will eat everyone. Well, if I complete my mission the trial should end and I can get out before it's too late. Commit to my thievery. When the hell did I steal anything? Plenty of times actually. Shit. Doubt the damn archangel cares much about some orphan stealing bread though. Then what? Or has Aurelia stolen anything? The king did mention her trying to steal the scaredy princess seal, but that sounded more like her being framed and less like actual thievery. For now the main roots of the monster were busy rampaging in the center of the city, so the outskirts were still pretty safe, as long as you didn't approach the walls. Sofia had expected more chaos to break out, but despite the Alphagiad appearing a mere 10 minutes prior, most of the people that had witnessed the new outer walls were now praying in large groups. Of course, some outliers were also searching for a way out, which didn't exist. Sofia could see quite far, and a single jump over the roofs had confirmed that the whole capital city was already walled in. The root walls were forming a large dome around them that encompassed even part of the forest behind the royal palace. My skills are all useless against that. Can't even try hollow heart. I'm pretty sure I'll die if I get too close. Could try the arm throwing thing again, but does that thing even have a heart? It looks closer to a stone tree than a living being. Should have really studied the anatomy of the lesser phagiads a bit more back in Zangdar. At least this one isn't releasing poison gas. Yet. Further away, an old, white-bearded fire mage had tried to blast open the root wall. The explosion was impressive. The wall stood unharmed. The pavement near it was charred black, and that was it. He had been standing quite a distance away, nevertheless, a root had separated from the wall and charged at him. He dodged the initial blow and even cast multiple fiery barriers around him as he ran. He could run a few meters before the root split in four. He was impaled and dragged back to the wall. His barriers hadn't even slowed the roots. This looks a bit desperate. I can't even move that much. I can still avoid the parts of the city that are being targeted right now, but I'll end up cornered soon. In the distance, a winged woman had managed to cross the root wall by flying over, carrying a child out with her. Hero, LV 178. Sofia had no time to focus on that. Up above, the void was no longer silent. With a good enough hearing, one could detect a low rumbling. It came from somewhere near in the sky, but it was hard to pinpoint. The sound came in waves. In her head Sofia pictured a huge snoring monster. It was getting clearer until it got everyone looking at the sky once again, only to be met with the same vision of a red crack in a crystalline murder tree. With a dome of roots closing in on them by the second. The noise didn't stop, it got louder and louder and louder, until it was all anyone could hear. Most people saw nothing of what happened next. Only Sofia with her wider and superior vision could catch a glimpse of the thing that had traversed the sky in an instant. It was a golden and blue blur. Moving at an unimaginable speed. As it passed by the creature out of the sky, it split up. The golden light kept going forward, while the blue light's course changed to a straight line toward the crystalline pillar. Then the world turned white. If the rippling and crashing waves of pressure and heat that washed over the city weren't enough, one thing was unmistakably giving away the true nature of the blue light. The roar of thunder. Chapter 56, The Real Thing. The tremendous aftershock of the attack had knocked out most citizens. Even Sofia was shaken. It took her a good while to manage to stand up again amidst the debris and broken glass. Whatever had just attacked the Phagiad invader, it was in a realm of its own, far above even what a level 299 could do. At least 500, I bet. Does it even go that high? How many towers is that? The Phagiad was a similar anomaly. It had sustained serious damage. A charred gaping hole had been pierced right through it from side to side, but even from a distance, everyone could see it closing back up at an alarming speed. The scene from before played again. There was no enunciating rumbling this time. A simple trail of blue light appeared from the horizon, and collided with the crack, turning the whole world white a second time. If Sofia had ears, they would have been bleeding. This happened again and again. The massive tree monster upped the speed. Its roots split and split again, harvesting the lives of the capital's passed-out citizens and destroying everything in their path at a deadly pace. Eventually the blue lightning attacks stopped, and the charred holes in the tree all disappeared, replaced by newly formed flawless ice blue crystal. It gave up? While this was worrisome, it was a welcome break. Under the shockwaves of the clash of titans, Sofia had been barely able to think. As she expected, soon enough, a golden figure appeared in the sky. It was so high, she could barely make out its shape. In cases like this, identify never lied. Angel. Thievery, all of this set up? This whole story? For this? Fine. I think I get it by now. Whatever it is you want me to do, I'll do it. Electricity crackled at her fingertips. The battle between the angel and the tree was starting again, with fewer explosions this time. Sofia wanted to watch, but the root wall was approaching. It had started closing in, forcefully driving the few people still awake toward the tree. Like a closing net, the root dome shrank. Sofia tried her best to avoid the places with the nimbler, more active roots that had been killing everyone. The number of places in the city still free of the root's presence were already few. Up above, the battle still raged. The angel was throwing swarms of smaller thunderbolts, as well as cutting the growing swarm of roots attacking him. The roots that had previously only been coming out from the bottom now also sprouted from the trunk to repel the angel. He wielded what seemed to be the ultimate version of the thunder sword skill the Duke had used against the church's stone mage. The sword was no doubt several meters long, and it still looked like a puny luminescent toothpick next to the giant tree-looking monster's trunk. Sofia jumped up to see if the church was still standing, but it had been in the center of the city, right under the monster. There was nothing left. Jumping was a dumb move. She could have stayed safe for a bit longer if not for this. She had spotted a root on a nearby roof, and it had seen her too. It was her first time seeing it, but the roots had eyes. While closed, they were almost completely unnoticeable. The root shot straight at her as she was still falling. It was headed straight for her head. She activated the mana circles in her right leg. Misfortune. Further down the length of the root, another one decided to cross over it. This resulted in the root getting blocked and aiming too low. It missed the head, striking the heart instead. But she didn't have one. The root harmlessly passed through the round hole in her torso, coming out the back. Sofia was skewered but completely unhurt. She grabbed the root with both hands and ripped it apart. It felt like cold thick leather, and was tough like metal but malleable. It took all of her strength to sever it. She fell to the ground in a tumble. The root wasn't chasing yet, it was recovering, growths of blue crystal forming a new serrated tip. Behind her the root wall had caught up. I'll just follow it. She ran along the length of the root that had stabbed her. For some reason, besides the angel, she had never seen more than one root attacking someone. even those who fought back like the old mage. They could split for sure, but there would only be one main route. Perhaps it was a way to optimize killing efficiency. Whatever the case, with the route that she was following making a sharp turn and chasing her, the others didn't attack her. This allowed her to progress deeper toward the city center. This advantage did not last long. The deeper she got, the more routes would take notice. About half of the way to the tree, the other routes along her path started attacking too. Dodging only the first one was no trouble when she wasn't stuck midair. Avoiding multiple ones was a crazy endeavor. Still, with her enhanced vision, reflexes, and an extensive use of regret to alter her trajectory, she managed. And rushed past the destroyed streets, weaving through the slithering webs of thorned crystal appendages. This thing is crazy. She had reached the foot of the giant Alphagiad. Countless roots wriggling under it were busy feeding the dead bodies of the capital's citizens to some sort of giant beak located on the underside of the trunk. The beak was restlessly opening and closing, it was even eating the roots feeding it, chomping off its own limbs, Sofia thought. Her instincts told her something was wrong. She used to identify. Alphagiad. Alphagiad. There's two of them. It's feeding a baby. This new revelation did nothing to mitigate the horror of the massacre. Sofia couldn't dwell on it, still being chased by many roots, now she could only run around the trunk, getting the attention of more and more roots. The 10 seconds cooldown between each regret use felt like an eternity. She had been grazed numerous times chipping away at her health pool, she tried to buy herself as much time as possible. 2 roots approached at the same time, she could only dodge one. Regret was down for another 4 seconds. She had to make a choice, avoiding the one going for her torso and letting the other one hit her arm. It severed her left arm above the elbow in a single strike, sending it flying into the distance. Her maximum and current health dropped by over 9,000. The roots had no coordination, they would often collide and get in the way of each other. So in a way, despite more and more of them pursuing her, it stopped getting harder to evade them past a certain point. There were so many around that she couldn't touch the ground anymore, jumping from the body of one root to the other, vaulting above and in between them. The body of the roots had some thorns too, but they were insignificant compared to the damage the heads could inflict by stabbing. In the black sky, the angel backed out of the close quarters fight. He displaced himself to a point far enough that the roots couldn't reach him anymore. He was hovering in place like a singular star in the black sky. His appearance was quite similar to the tower's archangel despite a different silhouette and much less flickering. He raised his right hand. Sofia felt her mana fighting her from the inside, it wanted to escape. The very air she breathed that had been so full of mana until then turned dry and lifeless. The mana from all around was gathering, traveling to and tightly packing itself in the angel's hand. There were such quantities that it became visible to the naked eye, like wisps of white light getting sucked by the angel's skill. The roots around Sofia turned sluggish, they almost stopped moving. In the angel's palm shone a spark, then many others, followed by a burst of wild electricity. It expanded and compressed, getting bigger and brighter each time. It took the shape of an intimidating blue lightning spear that wouldn't stop growing. Sofia smiled and jumped up. No longer dodging the roots, she would instead climb up the trunk. This was what she had been waiting for. All this time, the trial had been leading up to this one single thing. Thief's commitment was the trial she chose for herself. This had to be the angel from her skills description, Acromegan. She had stolen his signature attack from him once, used it many times, and she was tasked to double down on it. But this time, she would have to steal the honest-to-God, unaltered, fully powered original. The real thing. The Angel's Bolt. Chapter 57, Fading. Sofia's plan was very bare bones. Since she couldn't completely copy the real spell, she would have to snatch it the good old-fashioned way. And so, she climbed, up the Alphagiad's body, or the trunk as she decided to call it. Her sharp demon claws barely managed to lodge themselves in the crystal, she had to use her full force to get a decent grip and project herself up higher. The angel would certainly aim at the creature's part that he had already been attacking all this time. It was near the very top, close to the crack in space in which the rest of the creature was still hidden. She assumed that the giant Phagiid was capable of creating new roots out of any part of its body to strike her down like it did for the angel. So she kept regret fired up and ready to go. The tiniest whir of her will and her skill would send her somewhere safer. As she kept climbing, nothing of that sort happened. Instead, when she got up to about half her goal's height, the Alphagiid's eyes opened. An infinite number of randomly disposed jet black eyes of different sizes opened on its whole body. Sofia felt disgusted that she had touched one. It had opened right as she was clawing the crystal and her hand had plunged straight into the black eyeball. At least it doesn't seem to mind it. The eyelids hadn't even closed back to protect the eye or anything. Guess it has no time to worry about me now. Not with what the angel's preparing. Some black eyes lit up, they shone in an eerie black light. It was then that it started, the Phagiid's counter-attack. No longer content with throwing crystal roots at its problem, it was shooting concentrated rays of black light at the defenseless angel. Each eye could fire up like that for 2 or 3 seconds before popping. It wasn't hard to imagine how destructive these mana beams must be. But she couldn't see it, for they all missed their mark, pointlessly shooting at the void in the sky. The angel was too good at evading. Much like the archangel whose form had been flickering in and out of existence in multiple places at once, the angel's defense was simply to not get hit. No matter how many rays the monster fired, whenever it looked that they would connect, the angel was no longer there. This all happened so fast, it was as though he existed everywhere and nowhere at the same time. As if whenever he was about to get hit, his form had actually never been there to begin with. It was both exhilarating and baffling to watch. Sofia wished she could stop and marvel at the display of power. Instead she had to keep climbing, and to be vigilant about avoiding the vicinity of the open eyes. Her pace had slowed down but she didn't let up. She couldn't. The angel's charged attack had never stopped growing in size as he kept evading the black rays. To call it a lightning bolt, still, would be akin to calling dragon's breath a fresh breeze. It was so bright and long, an ultimate spear, with the power of 1,000 suns. A scorching energy that could empty the seas and erase the mountains. The Alphagiid's trunk had started vibrating. Back down in the city, the roots had regained their vigor, and were scavenging the city in a renewed frenzy to completely squeeze it dry of its last living souls. Sofia had reached right about where she estimated the angel's attack would land. It's now or never. The angel's bolt expanded one last time, the mana then collapsed on itself, and the attack was launched. It flashed in a direct trajectory toward the monster. Sofia was already mid-air. She tried her best to be near the attack's path, facing the Phagiid. She held her hand up as if to catch the spell. But her prediction of the trajectory was wrong, she wouldn't be able to even graze it, she was dozens of meters away from the actual attack's path. The angel wasn't the only one in this battle who could disappear and be somewhere as if they had been there all along. Sofia, as a demon, had a very similar ability. Regret. Just as the attack passed her, she appeared right under it, her raised right hand firmly clutching the angel's bolt. A torrent of power this overwhelming couldn't be stopped by a mere demon. It didn't even slow under her grasp. She was the one to be moved, disintegrated. She was reduced to a shapeless primordial mana mist under the might of this energy that she had observed from too close. Health, 0/71690. Stamina, 0/71690. Mana, 0/71690. Sofia never saw the attack's apocalyptic aftermath. But one entity did see. It had watched this demon with curiosity until then. Baffled by its actions. As it helplessly watched the fleeing breeder Phagiid escaping through the cracks of space-time, it spied, still showing in the area backlog, the last system notice that this demon couldn't have seen. Trial completion, commit to your thievery before the true solstice's end, completed. The flickering form of the angel turned corporeal, he laughed, a maddening cackle shaking the fabric of this fake realm. The angel roared in crescendo. There was nobody to hear him, but he bellowed out loud. I am an imprint. You can't do this to me. My original will avenge me. Don't think you can escape my wrath. His scream died down as this trial's reality faded away, never to exist again. Sofia woke up. I'm Ailinini, she shouted in ecstasy. Followed by violent coughing and dry heaving towards the end. That had to have been the loudest scream of her life. Where am I though? She wasn't on the tower's floor buried under a pile of sand as she had expected, she was in a comfortable single bed. It was dark and somewhat cold, she felt around with her hands, finding an uneven log wall on her left. A dreadful thought emerged from the back of her mind. Is the trial not over? She touched her chest and was relieved to find her familiar features instead of a round gaping hole. Thank God, wait no, oh, whatever. Whoa, I'm not in my right mind right now. I'd be able to see in the dark if I was still a demon. But if I'm back in the real world, then where the hell is this? Sofia raised her right hand. If there was no light, she just had to make some. She wasn't midair to cast her spell, but she was confident she still could. After all, she had already done it from the bottom of a lake, and without the system's help. Arcs of blue electricity formed in her grasp, revealing the scenery of a tidy single-room log cottage. Two things attracted her attention, the tightly closed window shutters, and the small figure sleeping in a second bed. Everything else was unremarkable furniture. She cancelled her skill, restoring the room's darkness. Much better than a pile of sand. Standing up, she fumbled around to open the wooden blinds. The frisky breeze of mountainous air from the outside greeted her when she managed to push them open, blowing her smooth golden locks away from her face. Outside was a green mountain plateau, surrounded by a lush forest of giant pines. It occurred to her that she wasn't wearing her fireproof shirt and makeshift skirt anymore, instead sporting a slightly too small two-piece white cotton pajama set and woolen socks. She turned around to check out the other bed. Aleth? It was indeed the same banshee, sleeping soundly in the bed, wearing a similar-sized, and hence comically too large pajama set. Still breathing. Was she the one to move us here? No way. She wouldn't even be able to enter the Saint's Tower to get her. Not to mention carrying me over the ocean and up a random mountain somewhere. Well. She sat on the bed next to Aleth. Am I level 100 yet? Name, Sofia Afinareth. Age, 20. Class, Saintmancer. Level, 99. Health, 495/495. Stamina, 495/495. Mana, 44,000/44,000, minus 10,000. Seems not. No system log either. Really? What's going on? And what about Aleth? Hero, LV.99. She couldn't have failed, right? She must still be in there. Taking a second look at the cottage, there was a small kitchen corner, a bathing cask, a dresser, a central table and some everyday items neatly stacked in the corners. There wasn't much on the table, save for a 3-branch candelabra and an envelope tucked under its base. The envelope was blank with no seal and no sender. Inside was a single sheet of perfectly smooth paper, the likes of which Sofia had never seen. Blocky rows of unnaturally clean black characters spelled a short message. Chapter 58, Rewards. Welcome to the emergency safe house N degree 18. You have been displaced due to an unforeseen event or safety breach. We ask of you to kindly respect the secrecy of this place's existence and location, and that you leave the premises within a year. In the event of a successful trial, the rewards shall be autonomously awarded as intended by the operating manager, which might take up to a few hours. We wish you a peaceful stay and offer our sincere apology for the inconvenience. This was both unnerving and reassuring. They were safe, but that meant the towers weren't? Come to think of it, the island near the towers had been destroyed before we got there. If the thing that did it were to return, we might have just escaped something really bad. Could be that Olitha's theory that someone wanted to stop people from leveling up was true. But who could possibly do anything to the Archangel? The simple angel was already capable of so much destruction. Then the gods? In Sofia's opinion, the gods had to be weaker than the system. After all, they did little beside choosing saints, while the system monitored every sentient being on the planet. Even dragons had to use the system. Cooley had hinted so, although she refused to say anything more about dragons. The things in the house were untouched, so Olith was probably still in her trial. Sofia wouldn't mess with her until she woke up by herself. Instead she inspected everything in the house. She did find what little was left of hers and Olitha's stuff in a chest, buried in warm sand. Not much had survived the shipwreck. This feels a bit unreal. Then again, if the Archangel can create a copy of the past to throw people in there, it's not too far-fetched that he could teleport us here and change our clothes. She tried her best to forget the idea, and organized all they had left. There were unusable remains of Olitha's padded gambeson and plate armor. The fireproof salamander vest had also survived somehow. The sand pendant was obviously there, as the culprit for burying everything in sand. Going by the quantity of sand. We've been here at least 2 weeks. It still contained 3 gold coins, all that was left after gambling on the pirate ship. Which I should have taken back actually. That last hit on Olith had to have counted as a killing blow. Well, I ruined their ship though, and killed a few of them by accident. Not exactly in a position to ask for a refund. The other magic items all looked good as new, be it both items from the Saint set, the Lost City and the Slow Fall Ring, or Olitha's weapons. If mithril-coated weapons even count as magic items. She identified them again before going back to exploring the house. For whatever reason their name had changed, though the description was the same. Sofia thought nothing of it. Mithril-coated commas, a pair of mithril-coated weapons, reminiscent of an herbalist's sickles. Item level, 0 grade, precious. The kitchen's pantry was packed full of fresh food, including vegetables, eggs and cured meat. Some firewood was stacked in neat rows near the red brick fireplace. She found a bow and fishing rods near the entrance. The outside of the house featured a tiny outhouse, a vegetable garden about as large as the cottage itself, and a hand pump for water. She was barefoot and the ground was cold, so she quickly pumped some water in a bucket that sat near the door and got back inside. "I think I deserve a good meal and a bath," she mumbled, carrying the heavy bucket of water to the kitchen. Sofia was very busy sleeping in her bath when a system notification woke her up. "Am I, rewards now? Error. Hey. I don't have the strength to be surprised anymore. What's it this time? Foreign data breach detected. Now this. This is new. Admin overruled. ERRO overruled. ERR overruled. E overruled. Overruled. A new passive skill is available. That's... okay. Sure. I'm really done wondering how this shit works. Is a god messing with the system or what? Could they even do that? Available passive skills. Valkyria's Rihafen of Sorrow, welcome back, my dear daughter. This will replace Avatar of Death. The description of the skill sent shivers down Sofia's spine despite the hot bath water. She looked around, no abnormality, Olith still asleep, nothing weird besides these system messages. Okay. Not scary. Not scary at all. I'm not even bothered by it. When she looked at it again, the skill description had changed. Available passive skills. Valkyria's Rihafen of Sorrow, Sorrow the Recessed has recognized your value. However, one cannot be reborn as an apostle without a proper ritual, as such, you have been offered a middle ground. Vakariasrihofen is granted authority as an honorary apostle. Vakariasrihofen is granted advanced mana perception. When Vakariasrihofen's mana hits 0, she may choose to temporarily assume the physical form of a daughter of sorrow, lasting for 5 minutes. Mana will remain at 0 for this duration and the following 30 minutes. 10 levels of debt will be incurred each time and no experience will be gained from kills that occur as a result of this skill's use. Evolves at class level 300. This will replace Avatar of Death. Okay, now that's pretty good. Sounds great on paper, will it be all that useful? I have no clue what an apostle's authority is, so not counting that. Mana perception like I had as a demon would be great, that's really strong, couldn't have dodged so many attacks during the trial without it. The third effect, it's the kind of thing that you hope you'll never have to use. Losing 10 levels of future progression is harsh but not as bad as dying from running out of mana during a fight. Seeing how it evolves later on. How was Avatar of Death exactly? Avatar of Death, gradually become the embodiment of death in this realm. You may reap the souls of the recently passed, all is equal in death. When a nearby enemy's health reaches 25% or lower, they cannot regain life. Reap soul value, 9. Next function unlocks at soul value 100. The effect of preventing healing is good but rarely actually useful as far as I can tell. Especially if I keep destroying everything in one bolt. I still feel bad for the pirate ship. Well, that was the only way, I was one hit away from death. Besides that, Avatar of Death can evolve but I need to be around dying people. I hate to waste 2 good keywords like that, but the sorrow skill is just better right now. And I'm honestly scared of how many souls Avatar of Death will start asking for after I unlock a few functions if it already starts at 100. Not to mention the creepy message that came with the thing. It's for sure a god messing with the system, isn't it? All I wanted was skeletons. You have acquired the passive, Vakariasrihofen of Sorrow. You have lost the passive, Avatar of Death. And if both this and the deep things are gods, I'm sorry but then gods all have a terrible naming sense. From a human perspective at least. Actually the angels have weird names too. Maybe it's the system that's the culprit. The world changed under the effect of the skill. Her nascent capacity to feel mana evolved into what it had been meant to become. She could now see and feel the ambient mana all around her, a thin white mist that permeated all things. She could also stop focusing on it and she wouldn't notice it anymore. Guess I'm half a demon now. I really don't look the part. Sofia stepped out of the bath, still dripping wet, and walked up to Alitha's bed. So this is how the trials work? Alitha's head was encased in a bubble of mana, which was itself linked to the ceiling by a thick mana thread. Sofia followed the thread outside, it went straight through the thatched roof and up in the sky at a low angle. It was hard to say what it led to. Maybe the tower? She wished she could fly to investigate this, but alas, this wasn't an option even with her new skill. I can't wait to transform again. My vision feels so narrow now. She was already missing her demon body. She had been preparing to go to bed when the next slew of system messages arrived. Congratulations, you have triumphed over the second filter. You may now gain experience up to level 199. Additional rewards will be delivered after the level up. Detail is as follows. Completion reward, level up *1. Additional task reward, clothing set, Aurelia's serene scenery, *1. Completed hidden tasks, successfully use wild magic, cheat death, defeat a sentient 3 filters up in singular battle, survive a certain death encounter. Additional hidden tasks rewards, skill specialization point, active, *1, class skill level up point, upgrades a class skill to leave 100, *3. Please lie down in a secure environment to proceed with your level up. Finally. Give it to me already, I've never been this impatient my whole life. Chapter 59, Level 100. I could certainly use new clothes right now, but it better be magic items or I swear I'm never doing a damned bonus task again. Well, it wasn't the hard part of the trial but still. Sofia closed the blinds and locked the door. The night was cold in the cabin. She fed 2 more logs to the fireplace. It was the only source of heat and light. Should I get naked? She wondered out loud, reminiscing over what Drakran's guildmaster had taught them. The process of leveling up through a filter was very painful as it involved the system forcing your whole body to upgrade at once. Usually a level up was a simple gradual tempering of the body. When this reached its limit, the system would be unable to upgrade you anymore without a complete and intricate overhaul of your body. No matter if you were a human or a dragon, everyone would need to go through it. This whole thing sounded a lot like it would go better without clothes getting in the way. Also, she only had that one set of pajamas and she actually liked them. Wouldn't want to ruin them. It's already kinda tight, they might rip if I move too much. There was no one to see her here anyway. She waited on the bed. Everything's going to be all right. Can't be worse than a demonic rebirth. For sure. Initiating level up past filter 2, please do your best to stay still. As an affiliated saint, you have access to the customizable upgrade subsystem. You may not divulge any information about this subsystem or its existence. Calculating optimal path. No class evolution available. No race evolution available. Trial evaluation for upgrade potential, max. Your allocated upgrade score is 6,000 stat points. You may now allocate your points. Hoy, didn't Cooley say we get around 3,000 points evenly split between all stats? Being a saint isn't all that bad in times like this. Now how to split that? Obviously not a single point goes to my mana. 3,000 each for health and stam? Do I need that much stamina? I'm just throwing lightning and controlling Parath in fights. But the emergency demon form would be better with more stam, I guess. Orvod's cubes hit me for 6,000 back then, so I'd feel safer if I could survive at least one and not be incapacitated. Don't want to end up like Fox. But I'm missing a little bit for that unless I go all in with HP. I suppose 5,000 to health and 1,000 to stamina should be good enough. If I compare it to another class I know well. A level 100 paladin's base health should be 5,000 if I counted correctly, plus a third of about 3,000 points from this. So this means a level 100 paladin normally has around 6,000 health? I'm about as tough as a paladin now. Allocation complete, closing subsystem. Warning, due to the pristine essence passive, you will not receive any pain reduction. Great, exactly what I needed. That's already the second time this happens. As she laid still on the bed, mana gathered around her. The mist of mana that her new skill barely allowed her to see roused up, more mana gathered by the second, becoming thicker and denser. The air was so heavy and charged in mana in a tight sphere around her, it reminded her of being underwater. Using the feel of her own 44,000 mana points as a reference, what gathered around her was numbering in the hundreds of millions of mana points. That was much more than what the angel's last attack in the trial had gathered, so seeing such an amount was worrying. The no pain reduction warning was starting to look very scary. The mana density in the air was so thick that it was hard to breathe, move, or see. It was already hurting. The ambient mana tried its best to find its way inside her, through every inch of her skin, forcefully pushing aside anything in its way. A small price to pay for a longer life. She believed in these words with all of her being, no matter how strong the pain got. The ambient mana froze. It was conglomerating in bright ethereal lumps of magic. One of the hundreds of lumps sprang up and hit her in the stomach. Before she could even scream, Sofia fainted from the unbearable pain. Multiple times during the process, she would be awoken by the pain only to lose consciousness again the next instant. Her world became one of nothing but pain. You gained a level. Congratulations, your Saintmancer class reached level 100, plus 1 passive skill slot. New active skills are available. New passive skills are available. Wah! Oh, it's over. This was so much worse than dying. As someone who had carved out her own heart, Sofia thought herself pretty tough. That was nothing in comparison to what she had just been through. She stared at the ceiling like a dead fish. The fire in the chimney was long gone when she mustered the strength to move again. The bed was ruined, it had been covered in a terrible mixture of a pungent black liquid, sweat and blood, as well as some other rather unsavory things. Her retching at the scent of this only added to the mix. These remains were thrown outside to be burned later. Sofia felt terrible, but she was also stronger than before, much stronger. The bonus statistics had had a huge impact on her physical strength. Name: Sofia Afinareth. Age: 20. Class: Saintess. Level: 100. Health: 5500/5500. Stamina: 1500/1500. Mana: 44,500/44500, minus 10,000. I feel like that's very high numbers for my level. Life is good. I need to take care of the rest now. That will have to wait until I get another bath. And another meal, she grumbled. It was already morning when Sofia finished her feast. She barely felt the need to sleep. In part thanks to her Saint's Indolence bracelet that was one of the few things that had survived the whole ordeal. The first order now was the easiest thing on her to-do list, checking the clothing set she received. She found it silly, but out of all things, she was anticipating this the most. All her life she had only owned terrible or practical clothing. The content of this box would be proof of her new status. It had appeared on the table at some point, a cubic wooden box labeled Aurelia's Serene Scenery. It contained a long pastel light green robe with matching underwear, a pair of long gloves that reached up to her biceps, and fancy city-style boots. As the name implied, it was worthy of a princess, and if you looked hard enough, you could make out the barely visible scene of a lush forest sewn in the fabric. One of Aurelia's paintings, Sofia recognized her signature style. The pieces were all comfortable and perfectly fitted to her size. Is it some kind of silk? She wondered. It was without a doubt the softest and most luxurious fabric she had ever worn, unblemished and creaseless, almost weightless. She wanted to properly savor the result of her efforts. This was what she had earned. She twirled around. Unable to contain her excitement any longer, she blasted some Identify-S. Serene Painter's Robe. This robe was designed after Aurelia Grandcourt's last painting. It offers little to no protection, and no real benefits unless you wear the whole set. One should always look at the full picture. Item level: 100. Grade: Flawless. Restriction: wearer must be Sofia Afinareth. Soulbound. Serene Opera Gloves. These long gloves allow for a good grip and a slightly enhanced sense of touch. They cannot fall off by themselves. Item level: 100. Grade: Flawless. Restriction: wearer must be Sofia Afinareth. Soulbound. Serene Princess Boots. These fancy boots prevent feet pain as long as you wear them. A princess has a duty to go places. Item level: 100. Grade: Flawless. Restriction: wearer must be Sofia Afinareth. Soulbound. Serene Royal Privates. Though unassuming, these articles of clothing are both extremely comfortable, and most resilient. When all else fails, a royal shall at least preserve their dignity. Item level: 100. Grade: Flawless. Restriction: wearer must be Sofia Afinareth. Soulbound. Current set effect: for the weather doesn't faze you, temperature is but a number, be it in the desert or the icy plains, these clothes will make you feel as if you are taking a stroll in the most serene of forests, up to a certain point. These clothes cannot be fully destroyed. These clothes will consume the wearer's mana to self-clean, repair and repel both fire and water. Okay, I like it, though it is weird to think that I will only be wearing this at all times in the future. But unless I find better. Either way, it's all great effects. No heat, no cold, no cleaning. And they repair themselves even? I'd probably find it hard to go back to wearing anything else after using that. Well, it already feels weird to wear anything at all now after going around as a naked demon for a while. Arguably the demon form is better than these clothes. I'm back to the human race now anyway, not doing the ritual again. That was absolutely worth the trouble of doing the extra task. 10 times over. Now. The skills. Chapter 60, Skilling. First the new skills keywords, then the other bonuses. Let's have a look. I'll take anything useful at this point, I've already gained much from this. I won't even be mad if it's all bad keywords. Not too much at least. Well. Maybe a little. I can't wait to see what I got. I've been waiting for this far too long. She sat at the table. Trying to calm herself, she was wary of losing herself in her excitement. Her nails tapped in rhythm on the wooden table. Self-conscious about her weird habit, she grabbed a spoon to fiddle with instead. Waiting for her pulse to calm down. She was following her own mental guidelines she had prepared for the event. No impulsive decision. No impulsive decision. No impulsive decision. What was it again? Know yourself in the battles. Available active skills. Dispel, dispels. Mist, in a thick mist. Soul, to the Necromancer's life force. Mass, dispels all magic in a. Consecrated, creates a. Grip, its clutches. Available passive skills. Holy wings of, take to the. Undeath, to eternal life. The wooden spoon in Sofia's hand gave in under the pressure, reduced to splinters. You have acquired the passive skill, Holy Wings of. You have acquired the passive skill, Undeath. Sofia abruptly stood up, knocking over the whole table and her used plates. It was growing. On her back, from her shoulder blades, 2 pointy bones started poking out, breaking skin. They kept growing and growing, new bones came out that weren't even physically linked to the first, this whole thing made no sense. Then it stopped, all the bones were out, it was hard to call these things wings, the skeletal part of a pair of wings yes, but no one would be able to fly with that. They were still folded behind her back, not taking much space, like this they would be hard to see from the front. Sofia spread her wings. That's easier to control than a tail, so far. When they fully opened, they revealed their holy nature. The same holy light that Perith used as a sword, the same that her skill Heal Undead invoked, the yellow light of the gods, this was what enveloped her skeleton wings. It wrapped itself around the bones, twisting its form into a thin veil that also drew the middle parts of the wings. The light skin itself showed signs of undeath, as it took the appearance not of perfectly healthy dragon-like wings, instead missing bits and pieces, appearing tattered, distorted. Dragon zombie wings? The cabin was barely able to contain her full wingspan, under the imposing wings of bones and light, the rather dark cabin interior had become bright as day. Sofia laughed. Quaking, she screamed. Closing and opening her wings, she broke out in a victory dance. Messing up the cabin even more. Even after she was done, even after fixing everything, straightening the table and sitting back down, she couldn't wipe the smile from her face. Holy Wings of Undeath, you grew Holy Wings of Undeath, your anatomy forever changed. These are your limbs, take to the sky, blessed one, there is no need for explanations, and no going back. Okay, wow. I need to calm down. Business first, fun later. Active skills, 6/6. Holy Skeleton, level 93, LV 99. Heal Undead, level 56. Summon Blood, level 17. Lead the Dead, level 14. Angel's Bolt, level 100. Maiden Banshee, level 100, LV.99. Available active skills. Dispel, dispels. Mist, in a thick mist. Soul, to the Necromancer's life force. Mass, dispels all magic in a. Consecrated, creates a. Grip, its clutches. The two level 99 skills went up to 100 by themselves. Nice. Too bad Paratha's skill isn't 99 yet. But it'd be a waste to spend one of those level 100 boosts on it since it's so close, and I only have 3. I guess Alith really doesn't get a free pass for the trials despite what the skill says about linked levels. I hope Parath won't be stuck like that too. Alright, I definitely have enough keywords to make something decent. But no free spots. The immediate outliers are Summon Blood and Lead the Dead. Their low level says a lot about how little I use them. I still need Summon Blood for Paratha's ritual and as a money-making tool. I'll get rid of it later, but it's still good to have for now, even at low level. The higher levels only serve to make more blood anyway. What am I gonna do with all this blood? Flood a dungeon. I guess Lead the Dead has to go. It was good when I made it, but now what am I gonna use that for? It's been useless ever since I escaped the church. You have lost the active, Lead the Dead. Now what do I make? Consecrated sounds very strong as a keyword. Maybe Consecrated Soul could do good things, although it's hard to imagine what. I like the sound of Mass Grip too, could be some way to immobilize opponents. I sorely lack that. Fighting the Siren Queen would have been a lot less stressful if I could have restricted its movements. I guess Alith already has her Banshee Shriek that she never used. Can't really rely on it. What about Consecrated Grip instead? Single target but stronger? Yeah, it has to be one of these two, either Consecrated or Mass Grip. I'll be able to boost it up to level 102 and have it ready for the next fight. Can't I take both? Does that work? Can I cheat like that? She mumbled. So, if I take a front keyword and a rear keyword, it combines into a skill and I can't add anything to it anymore. But what if? Sofia whispered to herself, as her nails tapped on the tabletop. I'll start with the one that I want more, just in case. You have acquired the active skill, Consecrated. Alright for now. You have acquired the active skill, Mass. What the hell, it works. Active skills, 6/6. Holy Skeleton, level 93, LV 99. Heal Undead, level 56. Summon Blood, level 17. Angel's Bolt, level 100. Maiden Banshee, level 100, LV.99. Consecrated Mass L Leave. Well, it's a bit fucked. I'm surprised the scribe isn't doing anything about it. And now for the final touch. You have acquired the active skill, Grip. Yup, it's working just fine. That means I can probably do it the other way around too and stack 2 end words. Shit. Soul Grip. I could have made Soul Grip. Mass Soul Grip even. That sounds so fucking strong. I'm so delirium, she lamented, sulking with her face squished flat against the table. It's all Alith's fault that I'm becoming so impulsive like that. She's a bad influence for real. Sofia snuck a peek at the sleeping ghost on a tidy bed. Can't you wake up already? She mumbled in a tired voice. It took her some time to focus on her task again. She tried to access Consecrated Mass Grip's description. Error. So it didn't actually work? Please try again later. That's reassuring. Kind of. Time for a toilet break, I guess. When was the last time I even? Active skills, 6/6. Holy Skeleton, level 93, LV 99. Heal Undead, level 56. Summon Blood, level 17. Angel's Bolt, level 100. Maiden Banshee, level 100, LV.99. Graveyard of the Righteous, level 1. Does this still have anything to do with what it was? Graveyard of the Righteous, create a 3 meters, 3 asterisk skill level, large and wide consecrated graveyard around the Saintess, must be solid ground. The skeletons of the righteous dead are buried in the graveyard, their arms and upper body may surface to grab the Saintess's enemies, incapacitate them or drag them underground. The skeletons have the relative strength and resilience of a level 1 asterisk skill level, paladin and cannot inflict any direct damage. Requires an 8 seconds, 10, class level /50, channeling to deploy. Costs 100 mana per second to maintain. Okay. That's absolutely insane, isn't it? Useless against flying enemies though. But I can see this being extremely useful. If we go back to Zangdar for example, no. Actually, no way. What if there's an alpha in there? Hell no, ain't no way we're going back. I've died enough times. The skill description is still unclear about how many of those skeletons there are, but I assume it scales with the size. Finally summoning skeletons again. Ah! Took me long enough. What would I be now if things had gone to plan and I was a simple necromancer? I kinda like it, being a Saintess.